Once upon a time in Lagos, a brilliant mechanical engineer named Norma thrived in a male-dominated oil servicing industry. At 42, she was a first-class graduate from a prestigious university, her intellect sharper than a welding torch. Her quiet confidence shattered stereotypes, earning her respect among industry giants. Norma's name echoed in boardrooms and offshore conferences, her accomplishments shining like medals. Yet, despite her professional success, her personal life was a source of silent pain. Norma's brilliance couldn't shield her from societal judgment. Unmarried at an age when her peers had settled down, she faced whispers and pity. Her younger sisters, including one 15 years her junior, were all married, and their weddings amplified her loneliness. At one family event, a relative sneered, "Engineer, but no husband," implying Norma's pickiness was her downfall. The words stung, planting doubts that maybe love wasn't meant for women like her, successful, wealthy, and fiercely independent. Desperate for companionship, Norma had once proposed to a man after a single date, even buying him a car to win his affection. He took the car and married her subordinate instead, leaving Norma humiliated. Heartbreak became a familiar ache, and she poured herself into her work, building a legacy while privately yearning for love. Then came Chijuki, a charming but aimless man who had dropped out of Polytechnic after 2 failed semesters. Jobless and ambitionless, he spent his days idle, yet he had a knack for preying on successful women with gentle hearts. Chijuki saw in Norma the perfect target, a woman whose desperation for marriage outshone her brilliance. He wooed her with flattery, calling her special and claiming real men weren't intimidated by her success. For Norma, his willingness to stay was enough. Within months, they were married. Norma funded the entire wedding, ignoring Chijuki's illiteracy and lack of drive. Her family, especially her mother, watched with unease, sensing he didn't match her strength. But Norma was radiant, relieved to shed the stigma of singleness. At the altar, her eyes sparkled with a joy born of long-awaited validation. She could finally say "my husband" and feel like she belonged. The marriage began sweetly. Chijuki called her "my queen," kissed her forehead and blessed their meals. But 3 months in, his true colors emerged. He demanded control of her finances, claiming her wealth belonged to him as her husband. He coerced her into transferring her house and cars to his name, threatening to leave if she refused. Terrified of losing her marriage, Norma complied, sacrificing her dignity to preserve the title of Mrs. She excused his insults, justified his infidelity, and even blamed herself when he struck her. At 42, she saw him as her savior, the man who erased her shame by choosing her despite her age and inability to have children. One evening, after a long day at work, Norma returned home with fresh braids, a rare act of self-care. Chijuki was lounging with his friends, who mocked him for lacking control over his wife. "She looks like the man of the house," one friend Ojuku jeered, pointing at her braids. Stung by their laughter, Chijuki's fragile ego demanded action. He called Norma to the center of the room and asked who permitted her to change her hair. Confused, she replied that she didn't need his permission. Enraged, he slapped her and, in a horrifying act, set her braids on fire with a lighter. The room erupted in chaos as flames caught. Norma screamed, rushing to the bathroom to douse the fire with water. Miraculously, her scalp was spared, but as she stared into the mirror, shaking, her life flashed before her. She saw herself a woman who had surrendered her power, her name, and her brilliance to a man who burned her to prove his dominance. His friends, complicit in their silence, offered no help. In that moment, Norma's awakening began not gently, but violently. Returning to the living room, she found Chijuki laughing with his friends. "Get out of my house," she demanded. They mocked her, with Chijuki reminding her the house was now in his name. Silently, Norma retreated, only to return with an envelope. Her voice steady, she revealed the original house deed, bearing her name, her lawyer's stamp, and her signature. The document Chijuki had signed, believing it transferred her assets, was a legal disclaimer relinquishing his rights to her properties. "You thought you were smart," she said, locking eyes with him. "I was smarter." Chijuki's bravado crumbled as Norma exposed his deception. She had hired a private investigator after spotting a suspicious message on his phone from a church sister mentioning children. The investigation uncovered his secret life, a wife and 2 young children in a village abandoned after he promised to seek work in Lagos. He was a fraud, a manipulator who had targeted Norma's wealth. She threw photos of his village family at him, demanding he confess. His friends, once loud with mockery, slunk away, unwilling to be associated with his disgrace. Norma wasn't finished. She made a call, and within minutes police arrived. Her legal team had compiled evidence of financial abuse, identity fraud, and bigamy. As Chijuki was handcuffed, he screamed, "I'm your husband!" Norma stood tall in the doorway. "No, Chijuki, you were a project and your deadline has expired." She closed the door, shutting out not just him but the shame and desperation that had once defined her. That night, Norma called her mother, sharing everything. "I'm coming home tomorrow, Mama. I need to rest," she said. Her mother, weeping with relief, welcomed her daughter's return not just to their family home, but to herself. Alone in her bedroom, Norma savored the silence, her scalp stinging but her spirit healing. She smiled into the mirror, rediscovering the lioness within a woman who would never again bow to a man's insecurities. From that day, Norma redefined her worth. She stopped measuring her value by a man's presence or society's expectations. Her scars became badges of resilience, her confidence rebuilt on her own terms. She knew love might come one day, but it would be with someone who cherished her, not exploited her. The lesson was clear. No woman should sacrifice her dignity for a title. Marriage should never cost peace, identity, or safety. A successful woman isn't too much. She simply needs someone who isn't too little. Better to be alone and whole than married and broken.